Thank you, Mr. President. I've come to the floor today as a United States Senator, of course, but also as a former soldier who served in uniform the last time a president rashly sent our men and women into an unjustified war in the Middle East. I spent nearly a year at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, recovering from the injuries I earned in Iraq. And every morning, as I struggled to sit up straight, every time I was rolled into yet another surgery, I made sure to read the poster I had next to my hospital bed. It was a framed copy of the Soldier's Creed, the words that those lucky enough to wear the Army uniform live by. That same framed copy now hangs by my desk here in DC. And as I glanced at it this morning, I realized that there's perhaps no greater proof that Donald Trump never deigned to serve a day in his life than the mockery he makes of the Soldier's Creed's commitments every single day he has been in office. The creed may be associated with the Army, but the sentiments hold true for all of those who wear the uniform of this great nation. Our military men and women go out there every day and do their jobs, no matter the risk, all on Donald Trump's orders. So, I ask you, Mr. President, why the hell can't you do your job too? When asked to justify his illegal actions, Donald Trump's tried to hide his cowardice behind our heroes' courage. He's tried to act as if questioning why we're at war is the same as questioning the skill and bravery of our troops themselves. It isn't. And I'm here to call bullshit on the President of the United States, because I know that our military will always do the best job possible. When given a mission, our service members will say, yes, I will serve. They don't say, why me? They don't ask, will I be safe? No. They will always execute their orders to the maximum capability of their professionalism, and they are proud to do it. That isn't the problem. The problem here is that the person who's supposed to be leading them spends more time talking about his Marie Antoinette ballroom than he does sitting in the Situation Room trying to get us out of this war. The problem is the guy who claims to be making America great again looks at the word America and only sees the letters M and E in the middle of it. The problem is that the commander-in-chief not only has no idea what the end state is like for his war of choice, but properly doesn't even know what the term end state means at all. The problem is that even in the last 2 weeks, the man who is in charge of our nation's nuclear codes has himself gone increasingly nuclear. He's not believing literal war with Iran is enough. He's now gone on to proverbial war with the Vatican, choosing to pick fights with the Pope of all people, the Pope, rather than try to engage in any semblance of real diplomacy to end the conflict in the Middle East. He's threatened to annihilate an entire civilization, terrifying people overseas and here at home who are understandably worried about retaliatory strikes. And now, after one half-assed day of so-called negotiations with Iran, he's whipsawed to the next risky frontier in the region, a dangerous, complex, partial military blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, launching it at our nation's expense with no justification, no explanation, or any real plan of what comes next. His only plan seems to rely on the valor, the willingness to sacrifice, the professionalism of our military men and women. But let me tell you, that is not enough. They need a true commander. War is always tragic, but when it's preventable, when it's unjustified, it's not just tragic, it's a travesty. Trump wouldn't let himself be dragged in by the bone spurs to serve in Vietnam. So how dare he drag our nation into a war of his choice today? Is too infatuated with maximum pressure to make a serious effort at even minimum diplomacy. Once again, the Trump foreign policy doctrine has proven reckless, senseless, and dangerous. A doctrine in which fact and fiction are one and the same, one in which our commander-in-chief seems to come to military decisions by virtue of temper tantrums and announces them via tweet in the middle of the night, and one in which avarice outweighs advice every single time. Look, unlike Trump, I actually know what it's like to leave your blood soaking into the desert sand a half a world away. So I know what it's like. I know what it's like and what is at stake for for the troops this administration is sending into harm's way. We must safeguard their valor and their professionalism by doing our jobs. I can tell you this, it's a whole lot easier to cover your eyes and order other Americans to sacrifice their children and sacrifice themselves if you don't have to do any of the sacrificing yourself. It's easier to send other people's children to fight in a war if you know your own children are cozy in a penthouse suite somewhere. It's easier to ignore the everyday realities of war from inside the hallowed halls of the White House, where you've got McDonald's being door-dashed to the Oval Office. But it's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible if you've been actually outside the wire yourself. So I've come to the floor today to keep true a promise I first made over 2 decades ago. I ran for Congress, not because I wanted to be in Congress, not because I wanted to be a congressman or a senator. I ran for Congress to honor the men and women who carried me out of that bloody war zone. I made a promise that when the drums of war started beating again, I would be in a position to make sure that our elected officials fully consider the true cause of war, not just in terms of money, but in human lives and in the sacrifices of the men and women who wear the colors of this great nation. That was the vow I made to the troops I deployed with and to all of those who've served since I've hung up my uniform. I'm here today under this great Capitol dome to keep that most sacred oath, because right now, thousands of our troops are ready to do their jobs, even if it means laying down their lives. And it's tragic, it's disgusting to me that even as they prepare to do their jobs, our president and some members of this chamber seem so eager to neglect their own. So as those drums of war echo louder than they have ever in years, I am here to remind Donald Trump that he does not have the authority to unilaterally force us into war. He may never have read the Constitution, but I have. So let me direct his attention to Article 1, which makes clear that only Congress has the power to declare war. We are the ones tasked with deciding when and how Americans are sent into combat. We are the ones charged with that most solemn duty. Yet Trump is acting as if Article 1 simply doesn't exist, as if obeying the Constitution is optional, as if our founding document is just a yellowing, crumbling piece of paper that he can crumble up and toss into the garbage can at will. This should not, must not be a partisan issue. No matter if you're struggling to pay rent, or if your name is plastered in fake gold on a building on Fifth Avenue, no one can ignore the Constitution, especially if you've sworn an oath to defend it. No matter if you're a Mar-a-Lago worker pulling down double shifts or the President of the United States, no one is above the law. Look, I believe fully that there are certain solemn, urgent times when our military must be called upon to defend us. There are certain moments when the threat in question is significant and imminent, instances when military force is the most effective tool at hand, and that using it is necessary to protect America and her interests. The thing is, from what little information the Trump administration has shared publicly that he hasn't immediately contradicted, and sometimes the same sentence, this was not one of those times. So if his team actually believes that war is unjustified, then they need to come to Congress and do their jobs. Explain their case, giving the American people a say through their elected representatives, the members who sit at every one of these desks in this chamber. They need to respect the American people enough to finally tell them why they're being forced to bear the cost of this conflict, both in dollars and cents and daughters and sons. They need to respect our service members enough to prove why war with Iran is worth more children growing up without their mom or dad. They need to make it clear that they've thought this through and well enough that they can actually articulate what an end state with this war of choice in Iran would even look like. Then, when their case has been made, when the debate here in Congress is completed, then the members of this chamber must vote. What are you hiding? What are you hiding, Mr. President? We already know you're incompetent. What else are you hiding? Only a man so unqualified to be commander-in-chief would be proud to keep on risking our heroes' lives without even a concept of a plan for how to get them back home without risking more graves at Arlington.